I practiced a minimum of 20 mocks. I don't want to miss out on practice. So I
Right.
focused a lot on the mocks. And it was only till the last 4 to 5 mocks that now I was confident that come what may, I am definitely getting a good score. I think I was quite satisfied that at least whatever I could do on the exam day, whatever I had planned, I could replicate that. And there was no regret in terms of, what could have done better, at least on the exam day. But what we say in Hindi, that 100 baat ki ek baat. So that ek baat will be that rather than talking to a lot of people or observing what everyone else is doing, have confidence on yourself and work upon yourself. Right? Because even I was a bit confused, like which coaching to opt for. There was hundreds of coaching available online, but I think you need to be a very good follower for the results to happen. You can't doubt or distract yourself with 100 other ways which people are doing. So I think focus on yourself, compare yourself with your own performance rather than someone else's, and be consistent. So I think if we follow such the blueprint, ultimately, I think we are assured of a very good score.
Good evening, Tushar. How are you doing today?
I'm absolutely fine, Natasha. Hope the same for you.
All well. Look at this score that you got a 705 just 2 days ago.
Yeah,
So you're in the 99 percentile bracket. It's a massive congratulations. A perfect
thank you.
score in quant, 90th percentile, 90th score you've got, so 100th percentile there.
Correct.
81 in verbal and 84 in data insights. So
Correct.
first off, how did you feel once you saw that score? Of course, it was like for a brief period, but what was that feeling that, when you saw 705?
It was a big relief, to be honest,
I
because
was.
I was wanting to cross that 700 mark. Somewhere in my mind, I had it that I can cross that 700 mark, and I wanted it so badly. And I had
Right,
been writing a lot of mock tests from the past 2 months. So
right.
when I saw that score, and while attempting the test, I was sort of, I think in my back of the mind, I was sort of getting that hint that maybe I can cross that mark, or
Oh,
maybe I might fall 10 to 15 points short. But when I saw the 705 on the screen, that was a big sigh of relief
relief.
for me.
So, how many do you recall? Because it happened just 2 days ago. How many questions have you got right? And how many questions, or rather, I would say, how many questions you've got wrong in each of these sections?
Sure. Yeah, I remember that completely. So obviously, quant was 100% for me. There was no question wrong in quant. For verbal, I remember there were 4 questions wrong. Or I think in verbal, there were 5 questions wrong. And
Five.
in data insights, there were 4 questions wrong.
4 questions wrong. Quant, you said there were
Hmm.
none, right?
Yes. Correct.
All right. So the last thing that I generally ask students, but I'm going to
Hmm.
ask you first, where did you apply with this score? Did you apply or are you still like waiting, hoping, maybe you'll give it a time?
So I haven't applied as of now. So in fact, right before our interview, I was having a chat with Mr. Autry, and I have a call scheduled with him tomorrow morning. And I have till tonight to send my score for free to 5 universities. So he said that just chill, just send them to whatever universities you want. So maybe I'll just decide in a couple of hours, and then tomorrow I'll have a detailed discussion with Mr. Autry, because I feel that round one is just around the corner. So I have that thing in mind that I want my application to be well prepared. So I'm not that much thinking about round one versus round two for now. And I think post my discussion with Mr. Autry, I will take an informed decision that how to sort of plan out my journey ahead.
This is why I ask a lot of them because a lot of these students, you may have heard it also, a lot of them have
Hmm.
this inhibition that ki kaun se school mein I should apply before even getting the score. So,
Right.
right there, you can always give it a thought once the GMAT is out of the way.
Exactly.
Then you have entire focus on what schools by evaluating your application, by
Right.
evaluating your profile as well. Right
Yeah.
now, let's go to the very beginning, Tushar. Just give me a little bit of a background about yourself, about what you're doing, and how did this entire GMAT scheme, come into the entire scheme of things. If when did this MBA thing come into play? Who inspired? What inspired you to get there?
Sure. Sure, Natasha. So I think, so giving a brief about myself. So I hail from the state of Punjab. My birthplace is in Patiala, and I've been born and brought up there itself. And post my schooling, I did my graduation from IIT Delhi.
Mm.
And I was fortunate enough because, IIT Delhi itself is India's one of the best colleges. And once I went there, I think that is where, I had this idea of doing an MBA. And more than MBA, it was more about, exploring the education system of other countries apart from India. Because once you have sort of reached to the epitome of Indian education, then you sort of feel like, there is still a long way to go. And it's a matter of fact that Indian universities do not perform that well when we talk about the QS rankings or the international rankings. So I think from my fourth year, I was sort of, I had that instinct in mind that maybe some point in my life, I would like to explore various other education systems and various other cultures. So that was just a starting point. Then obviously I got placed in a company, and I was placed from the campus itself, and I started working in the corporate. And then almost after 2 years of work experience, it sort of, I sort of got an idea that maybe I should opt for higher studies now, because I was sort of feeling some kind of lacking, and I wanted to have a postgraduate degree in hand. So I even tried my luck at the CAT. So I wrote the CAT exam in 2022, and I got a score of 99.68 percentile, which was a good score. But like I could not, clear the Ahmedabad, Bangalore, and Calcutta. So my
Right.
target was that I am ABC should be my target, and I could not get into them. So that was a bit disheartening for me. And by that point, I was sort of thinking that now I'm sort of accumulating a significant work experience as well, and maybe I can give a shot for GMAT as well. So it was last year, almost I think 1 year before. I still remember the date. It was 10th August when I opted for the top 1% course. And I was just scrolling online, and I came across the top 1% ad. I opted for it, and there was an introductory session by Mr. Sandeep. So I attended it, and I was completely in awe of how he was explaining things. I sort of could relate, or could sort of connect with whatever he was trying to tell the students. And I think that very next day I opted for the course. And so at that point of time, obviously, we had that classic edition. The focus
Right.
edition had not yet come. So since I opted for it in August, and I sort of estimated that it might take me 2 to 3 months to prepare for it. So I was thinking that maybe I will write my GMAT somewhere towards the end of October. I will have 1 month in hand so that I can, maybe apply for round two applications. And
Yeah.
at that point of time, also, I was not thinking much about the applications. My focus was that I need to get a good GMAT score, and that
Right.
is something which even Sandeep sir emphasizes a lot in his talks. So I was very much clear with it that I firstly need to focus on GMAT. I think the preparation was pretty enjoyable. I started with the verbal because I had this understanding that quant is something which is one of my strengths, and I don't need to start from the start in quant. Maybe I can just give brush up my all the points, and maybe a bit of practice should help me ace quant. But verbal was something which I was very much concerned about. So I really enjoyed. Like I think I started with RC. Sandeep sir always gives us a plan. There is a Google
Study
sheet
plan.
with all the week-wise plans. And I was in a self-paced course because, I sort of used to get up in the morning and see the lectures. So that was my study schedule. So I followed the plan very religiously for verbal specifically. And I really enjoyed all the octave techniques and all the reading comprehension passages which we used to discuss. And side by side, I also, started watching the Know the World videos as well.
Oh
So I
yeah.
think whenever I was having dinner, I replaced my YouTube and Netflix sessions with the Know the World sessions.
Oh man,
So I
that's
created a
so
playlist in
cool.
YouTube, and that was, I think, a very, very engaging thing for me. And it was sort of, I felt really good that, I am sort of having my leisure time, but at the same time, I'm expanding my
Getting
horizons as well.
information. This is
Yeah,
classic. What you're doing is this networking that you generally get to do in the, the MBA's
exactly.
scheme of things, right? You are
Right, right,
already
right.
doing it, but now in the, you're already preparing for it because these are the things
Correct.
that there's a dinner conversation that happens in MBA. But
That's
great.
correct.
This one catch. You mentioned you joined last year and you've been preparing very well, let's say schematically with 2 months.
Mhm.
What changed? What took you longer? What happened in between? Uh, right there, that kind of just took it so far.
Sure. So I think one major mistake I would say, or one thing which did not work for me, was that I did not focus a lot on practice. So I had just completed my verbal course, and obviously about quant, I was confident. I had done a bit of some problems, and I was confident that quant will work for me. But for verbal, I lacked a lot of practice, and I had booked my GMAT on I think 17th or 18th of October,
Uh,
and by that time, I think I had written just one mock, and I just straight away went to write the GMAT, and that was a shocker for me because I scored a 640 in the
right,
classic edition, and
right.
there also I could clearly see that my quant was very well, but verbal was definitely drastically very low. So at that point of time, I realized that verbal is something which is gonna take a lot of effort. I sort of then went back to the course material and tried to see where all I might have lagged. And sentence correction was one of the areas where I had performed very poorly.
Right.
So at that point of time, I tried to focus to improve my score and to grasp everything or to practice more. But again, then there were some commitments in my work side as well because I was working parallelly. So I could not sort of manage my time that well. And
Right.
by the time I could complete that course, it was already January. And then in the meanwhile, obviously, the focus edition was in place. So at that point of time, I thought that, maybe I should take a pause. I was a bit overwhelmed with, studying so much over the past 6 months. So I took a break and I thought that maybe, I will just sort of reconsider this idea. And maybe now I will focus on the focus edition. Because the good thing about focus edition was that the sentence correction part was
Correction
not there
itself
in verbal.
wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I think that was what my thoughts were. Then there were a couple of things which were happening in my life. I was shifting places. So up till that point of time, I was working from home. Then I shifted to Gurugram, which is my work location currently. And then from May onwards, I sort of realized that okay, I need to recoup.
Restart.
I need to restart. And from May onwards, I started my preparation. And this time, what I wanted to make sure is that I don't want to miss out on practice. So I
Right.
focused a lot on the mocks, and I think that is what it took me a bit more time because I practiced a minimum of 20 mocks. I clearly remember practicing minimum 20 mocks till my GMAT exam, and it was only till the last 4 to 5 mocks that now I was confident that come what may, I am definitely getting a good score. Maybe 680 plus is a sure, but obviously I wanted a 700 plus or maybe towards 715 side. So once I was confident about it, then I booked my GMAT and got this score.
One of the things that you just said was extremely very important, and it's like I'm summarizing what you said. Is when you
Mhm.
started, you did anticipate ki, in 3 months I can do, and you reached that point. But beyond that point, it is really not, you cannot anticipate all the uncertainties. Obviously, when you started in August, you didn't know that you'll be in Gurgaon
Right.
in January. So those are the things that the life takes over, and
Correct.
the entire idea of मैं GMAT दे दूंगा within 3 months, that slips away. One of the things that
Yes.
if you could give it within 3 months, of course, the times were very difficult the last 6 months or the last year in the last second half
Mhm.
because there was so uncertainty about the transition of the GMAT classic edition to focus edition. Should you do that? Will even
Correct.
colleges accept or not, right?
Exactly.
Those were the very difficult times, and we can understand if there was a little lack in the transition. But here you are with the
Yes.
score equivalent to a 99 percentile. I mean, you have a 99 percentile score, so that always increases your chances. Now, going back
Right.
to your prep mode, you said you did not
Mhm.
really, you just looked up on the internet and you got started because the philosophy and the understanding matched. One
Mhm.
thing that I wanted to highlight, how did the work kind of took away or gave you enough time and space when you said you were working for you could just tell us where were you working and what is that most sometimes some people do not get the luxury to even speak about work or even get
Correct.
some time off from work because hey, you've been paid, so whatever you do
Mhm.
before or after, that is your thing. Some people do have the
Exactly.
luxury
Mhm.
to take some time off. So how did you manage and maintain the schedule for preparation and then work?
Sure. So I think last year when I started my preparation, I was working in the same company where I am now. So I'm working with OLX India, and I'm working as a senior business analyst here. So I think last year, I think there was some benefit from the work side as well because I had good relations with my manager. So I had discussed this idea that I want to take some time to prepare for higher studies, and he
Right.
was completely aligned with it because somehow I had that particular reputation with my manager that he knew, and he knew that whatever work I give to Tushar, he will be able to wind it up in the considerate time, and then after the work is done, he has his time with himself. So I think that was, I think, the very first point for me was that I had good relation with with my manager, and I had this understanding. So he was well aware that Tushar needs some time to prepare off, and he will definitely devote all his weekends to preparation, and maybe every day he will require 2 to 3 hours of prep.
Oh,
So
that's
that was one thing. Yeah, and secondly, what I tried to focus, and I even discussed with this with Sandeep sir right in our first session that I might not be able to devote the same amount of time every day, because the work is dynamic. Sometimes you get more work, sometimes it is less. So I just try to understand that what is the minimum amount of effort which is expected of me. And he said that it's probably 2 to 3 hours. So once I was clear about it, I made sure that I am spending at least 2 hours, whether in the morning or towards the end of the day. And that is something which I used to decide. For example, let's suppose if my work today is a bit more, so and I feel like this is the right time for me to spend 2 hours for GMAT preparation. So maybe I'll spend those 2 hours right now, and I'll get up early morning tomorrow to complete my pending work, so that my work also does not get affected, and at the same time I'm in the right mind and space to focus on GMAT. Because what, at least for me, it is like when I'm not in the mood to study, then I can't force myself to study. But there is definitely one slot in the day which I used to find, whether in the morning or towards the evening, that I am definitely spending at least 2 hours. And obviously, then weekends are definitely for me. And since I was at home, so I did not have a lot of activities to be indulged into. So I think weekends were a game changer for me. At weekends, I could completely focus on the GMAT preparation.
This is very nice to hear. One of the things that I would say, even at work, if we do all get benefited from such a nice leadership, or managers would be able to
Right.
really appreciate that kind of an effort. I mean, a lot of
Correct.
that, I hope I don't get bashed for saying this, but it's not the case in India. I mean, that kind of a culture should still be inculcated where a leader is yeah, really encouraging their let's say colleagues to be doing what they intend to do. But glad
Correct.
you had that ecosystem to get that going. Now,
Mhm.
in terms of, let's just dive a little deeper into our GMAT preparation. You did
Mhm.
touch base on how verbal was weaker, let's say, in than quant, and then you prepared for DI. What particular content or material really stood out for you in your in each of these section, and what were your like let's say, probably you can say, what were your challenges and how did this material come in to rescue you, and then you saw the outcome in the scheme of things. If
Mhm.
you use something specific, maybe error logs or maybe anything that you had a certain insight towards preparation, maybe you added some more elements in your preparation, you can just let me know about it.
Sure. Sure. Right. So I think I can go section wise, starting from quant, then verbal, and DI in the end. So for quant, as I said, that one thing which was beneficial for me is that I did not have to start from the very start. I was almost clear about the concepts and the type of topics which were asked in GMAT. But obviously, I knew that I can't take it very lightly, because one thing which Sandeep sir introduced us is the traps, which the GMAT uses very frequently. So I focused directly on the traps. I had given a couple of mocks. I had, tried to solve a set of questions, and I realized that at least my basics were clear. But obviously, there can be some traps. Sometimes I am not able to infer the question properly. And that used to happen a lot in the data sufficiency section, which
Right.
was initially in the quant section, and now it is in the DI
Yeah,
section.
section.
So I think I sort of realized that, okay, this is my weak point and I need to focus on that. So for data sufficiency, I solved all the content which was available. I
Right,
think there is a separate PDF for data sufficiency, which I solved completely. And I
right,
made a note of what kind of traps are there, whether it is in the inequalities or the word play, less than, equal to, or less than or equal to. There were a lot of those things which were mentioned, in that particular PPT. And I made a note of them. And once I was clear with that, then for quant specifically, I focused on frequent practicing, because I knew that that 45-minute window, I need to be at my prime focus, because there is nothing which is lagging in terms of the conceptual clarity or knowledge. It is just my carelessness or lack of focus which can lose me points. And since I was clear that quant is my best part, that was also one of my targets, that I need to score 100% in quant, because
right,
that is the best possible or the best achievable thing for me. For verbal and DI, I still had some doubt, but for quant, I was very much confident, and fortunately, I could get that in the final score as well.
right,
So yeah, I think that was for quant. For verbal, as I was saying, I think the whole content helped a lot. And since RC and CR was covered in the classic edition itself, so I did not have to uh, grasp any new course material. So my last year effort of doing that course material in the order which is suggested. So whenever there is a like, I just followed the plan. So whatever lecture are supposed to be watched, I watched them. Whatever pre work and post work was there. I used to watch that. And one thing which I would like to highlight here is that the concept of pre-work, I think, was a game changer, because once you solve a particular set of questions even before the lecture, then you are more able to relate with it. Once
Right.
you have solved those 10 questions and then Sandeep sir is discussing those 10 questions, I can retrace my thought process and then I
Exactly.
can modify my thought process in the way it is required. So I
Right.
think that was a game changer. And even I think I've realized that while solving questions in the recent past, I could sort of feel that, I could sort of relate that, okay, this is what Sandeep sir was talking about, how to eliminate those answers, how could you quickly, just skim off the nonsense answers, because there
Right.
were a lot of verify and eliminate concepts in Octave. So I think that was a game changer for me, both for RC and CR. And for DI, I would say in DI, obviously, I did not cover a lot of content because, again, I was confident that my quant is good. And by the time DI came, I was well prepared with my quant and verbal. So in DI, again, it was all about practice. And one thing which I applied while giving mock tests is that I used the mark as review option a lot in DI. Because what I realized is that sometimes we encounter a set which is quite large, which is taking out a lot of time
Correct.
from the time we have. But once we mark those answers and skip it, there are a lot of easier questions in the end.
Right.
And I actually, while giving mock tests, it was a frequent thing that I used to reach only till question number 17 or 18, and I
Okay.
used to miss out on the last two questions. And most of the times, those were very simple and
Simple.
quite easier than the ones I had encountered.
Oh,
So that is
nice.
one thing which I made sure that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on a bigger set. If I'm not able to crack it, I'll just mark and skip it, and I'll complete the whole paper so that I can go back to the
And
bigger set.
those
So I think
questions.
that was one thing which helped me a lot.
Yeah, there's one thing about the DI as well. It's quite intense and dense, more importantly.
Mm.
Sometimes you may not even grasp what has been asked. And why I say dense, you look at some of these graphs, some of these figures, it seems like, oh my, this is like a problem to solve in maybe if you're a
Right.
consultant separately, right?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
there are obviously some of these things that Sandeep sir says specifically. How do you skim through all of these things? How do you only look for something? Do you have something to say about it? How did you go about highlighting and go about these questions specifically?
Sure. So I completely agree with you. Sometimes the graphs are so overwhelming and there is so much of information that our first instinct is to understand, each and everything which is mentioned in the paragraph.
And you
But
don't
the
have that
irony is that
time to
exactly.
understand and go forward. Yeah,
Exactly. But the irony is that in the questions, sometimes all of that might not be required. For
correct.
example, in that multi-source reasoning where there are three tabs, it is possible that that particular question just requires the tab one content or just one paragraph is enough to answer that question. So what I used to personally do is that I used to skim through the content, whatever I'm able to grasp, or some pointers that okay, this is like this table means this thing. That's it. I'm not concerned about what is above or below it. Once I used to skim through those that particular content, I used to jump on the questions, and then I used to relate that okay, this question is specifically from this tab one. So let's focus on tab one, and I think I can relate from RC where Sandeep sir used to say put your finger on it.
Ah,
So just used to put my finger that okay, this is the trust word, and I need to put my finger on that particular tab. So
oh,
I think that is what helped me
right.
very well in these sections. Yeah.
And how about the doubts? Did you see yourself often asking any questions to the faculty, and how was the response? Were you stuck in the entire preparation? Because this was self-paced course. More often than
Yes.
not, it's like almost that you're preparing on your own. How far or how close did you feel the entire preparation was when you were preparing?
Sure. So yes, I think that is a very good point you mentioned. Like since I was in a self-paced course, so email was the only way to communicate.
Delegate.
And I was actually, happily surprised to see the prompt response which I used to get from the counselors. Like what I used to do is, and I had a lot of doubts to be honest. Like when I was going through the course, sometimes in the PPT I had this doubt that no, this should not be the right answer. Maybe this should be the right answer, or maybe yeah, during watching the videos as well. For example, if Sandeep sir is explaining something, I had a particular doubt which I could not ask because it's a recorded video. So I just used to take a screenshot of that and write a mail, to the top doubts Gmail ID. And I think the resolution time was very less. I think within 6 to 7 hours there was a mail a reply to that question. And I think and big thanks to all the counselors and the people who are sitting on the other side. So
Right.
I think the response was very prompt. And sometimes I had a follow-up email as well that, maybe no, I'm not able to agree on this part. But
Right,
the teachers were patient enough to give me what all explanation was required. So at
right.
least from the doubt part, I did not face any difficulty of communication, although I was a self-paced course student, but I was very happy with the response I was getting for my doubts.
Super. So, directly on the exam day, right? What was the order of your preparation? Although I'm guessing I could really guess based on you said the strength and the weakness, but I would like you to say what was the order and why did you choose that order? And how the entire pacing of each of the section went through. Did you lose out on any time, or were you like dot on time, or did you save time in each of the section? What was your
Mhm.
strategy through in the exam?
Sure. So talking about the order, so my order was first quant, second verbal, and third DI. And the reason why I chose for it is that obviously quant has had to be my strongest section. So the whole thought was that, once I start doing quant, firstly, I would be able to focus more because that is a strong section for me. So I think psychologically, I would be able to focus completely in that section. And I was hoping that, if I get that section correct, that will be a confidence booster for me, that I'm already through with one of the sections and I'm very confident about it. So I think psychologically that made sense that I should start with quant first. And then obviously in between verbal and DI think verbal was the obvious choice because verbal was something which I had been doing from the past 1 year. So
Right.
I had more sense of comfort in verbal. And I think the whole idea was that because even Sandeep sir says that DI is nothing but, some extract from quant and verbal.
Correct.
So yeah, exactly. So once you are done with the two sections, then the third section feels like a mix of those. And I think then you are in the right space. Your mind is working in both those directions. So I think that was the logic behind choosing the order. And talking about the exam experience or, as you said, the time constraints and the pacing thing. So in quant, I think I was pretty much confident that, I will not be required to spend more than 2 minutes per question. And there were some questions where I could solve in maybe just 30 seconds or 1 minute, because sometimes even when you look at the options, you get an idea. And in fact, I remember in the actual GMAT, there were two questions regarding a simple multiplication of decimals. So it was like 4.16 into 3.89 into 6.71. So those absurd decimals which were there. And when I looked at the option, those were quite far apart. So I
Right,
had that idea that, okay, I just need to round them off to the nearest whole number and just multiply and get the answer. So
right.
a couple of questions were like that, which could be solved
Oh,
in 30 seconds.
so
So
smart.
that saved a lot of time.
Right,
There were some questions which seemed too easy to be true. So I was doubtful that, okay, how could this be so easy? So then I spent a bit more time to verify that, okay, I'm not doing any silly mistake.
right,
And there were some questions. I think there were two questions where I could not infer the language in the first row.
right,
So it was like I marked the best possible answer which I was feeling, and I just marked for review and went forward. I was able to complete, and because I had two questions marked for review, I had that in mind that I need to keep 4 to 5 minutes towards the end so that I can
mhm.
go back and
Back
solve
end.
those questions.
Right.
So I was able to complete my quant in I think 40 minutes. I had
Oh,
still 5 minutes left, and I went back to the questions. But fortunately, whatever I had marked, that I did not change my answer for quant. So I think I was correct in my thinking in the first hand, but I was confident. So once I ended quant, I was very much happy because ideally I was confident that I should get all the answers correct. And then I took a short break because it was very overwhelming for me. So I took the optional break. I opted for the break right after quant, and then I went into verbal. So verbal, I think there were two types of questions. I think broadly there were two types. One type was where I was completely confident that no matter what, this has to be the right answer.
right.
And I think there the elimination technique worked a lot for me because I could see that, okay, out of these five, these four cannot be the answer. One has to be the answer.
Correct.
Whereas there were other questions where I got stuck between the last two options. I was able to eliminate three, but I got stuck in last two options, and I'm sure a lot of students will relate with me
It
because
relate.
a lot of students
Correct.
face this problem. There, I was a bit unsure, and I think there I sort of realized that I can't spend a lot of time. So whenever I felt that I'm already over 2 minutes here, I just marked the best possible answer and marked for review and went forward. So in quant, I think I had marked almost 5 to 6 questions for review. Obviously, you can change only the answer for three of them, but I felt that, okay, let's mark the answer and move forward because I wanted to go till the end. And due to this reason, I was able to complete quant, and I think I had about 9 to 8 minutes still left. Sorry, for
Eight to
verbal, I had
yeah.
about 8 to 9 minutes still left, and then I went back. I think changed a couple of answers as well. But yeah, at least in verbal, I was quite sort of satisfied that whatever I could, I had done in time, and there was no rush of time, which sort of stopped me from making a rational decision. And talking about DI think DI again, there were some questions which I was very much comfortable with. And there was one passage in particular, like we were discussing a few minutes before, which I got stuck. There was so much information, I was not able to understand what these words mean. There were some technical words as well. So there I just marked the answers, whatever I felt, and went forward. And I think, and yes, in DI again, as I told that, in my mocks, I failed to cover the whole section. I used to get stuck till question number 17 or 18. So I had that in mind that, no matter what, I need to mark the 20th question and come back on my mark for review questions. So I think in DI, I still had 3 to 4 minutes left that I could go back to the passage. Although I could not, still infer it, that what did it mean? And I was a bit disheartened that, okay, maybe if I could have inferred it, I would have scored a 720 or a 750. But still, I think I was quite satisfied that at least whatever I could do on the exam day, whatever I had planned, I could replicate that. And there was no regret in terms of what could have done better, at least on the exam day.
So I think fantastically put together. If I had to summarize a few of the key points that students have to say, that even if you get an easier answer, that doesn't mean that you've gotten your question wrong. You don't have to double suspect about
Yes,
it.
right,
Second is this, there's always a review. It's a very smart move that you had, because even up until the exam day, there are some sections or some part of the exam question that you're still not very sure. You'll still be like, there are two questions, two options that seems to be very, very close. And what do you do? What is your exit strategy from there? That's what you highlighted
right,
very clearly. And third is very important to, go and touch the final line. And then
exactly,
because of the new feature in the GMAT that you can come back and review, this is phenomenal opportunity for you to come back and, go back to those questions that you were not sure of. But it shouldn't be like too
right,
many. It could be like less than five per se. But these three things
yes,
stood out so good during, I mean, whatever you said through the exam. I think I used those. Now, one very quick question: what
mm,
kept you motivated? Like, you said it drained a lot in the first half. You spent a lot of time, and now coming back and kick starting back in the month of May. What kept you motivated to, obviously you're not, maybe it's not the first thing that, deadlines are running. That was not your initial thought, perhaps. A lot
right.
of people think, oh, deadline is running, and they go up, mess up the entire GMAT preparation. But what is that kept you motivating to give your GMAT? Ab nahi to kabhi nahi types.
Yeah, I think I can think of three major factors, which helped me to restart my or resume my journey. One of them was my own flatmate. So I think moving to Gurgaon was a game changer for me because my flatmate himself was preparing for GMAT, and he had sort of a similar story like me. He scored a 620 on the classic edition, and he was preparing for it. So that was one thought I had, that okay, if he can do it, why can't I? I still have time. I can definitely go for it. The second was Mr. Autry had a session on 4th of June. I still remember. So since I'm a top 1% student, so I got that mail and WhatsApp message that there is some session happening for higher studies prospect
Yeah.
and all. That session was very enlightening. Obviously, that was not for GMAT, but the way Mr. Autry portrayed the whole concept of doing something out of the box and doing something extraordinary, that sort of instilled that idea that why shouldn't I give it one more try? I mean, it was just one try which I gave last year, and I still have a lot of tries left. So why shouldn't I go for it? And I think third was my own family, because they were constantly discussing with me that okay, what plans do you have? And they said that this is your prime age. You can experiment a lot, and you can again go for it. You can try it out once more, and maybe once this time passes, the options which you have or the freedom which you have might not be enough for you. So I think all these three things, they sort of fell in together, and I could sort of, regain that confidence that, no matter what, I should definitely give it a try. And one thing which I had in mind is that I was not thinking much about the result. I was thinking more about the effort, that
And
in
the
the end,
honest.
I should not have that regret that I did not even try. So I think that is what kept me going.
I'm so proud of you, Tushar. I mean, in terms of aligning these all things, one is you'll have one mentor, but two is that you'll have all of the things working towards, and all that you have to do is really honestly prepare and follow
Yes.
through, because then you have everything working for you. This is even if you fall back, right? But things came in together. This is extremely great. Now, what are the things that I would ask you that, if anybody's starting out right now? Because this is one of the things what you say comes out very strong and credible, more importantly, because you've been there, done
Mhm.
that. So what is it that you would recommend people who are starting out or who are in the middle of their preparation? Do's and don'ts is what we say.
Sure. Right. So I think one thing which I have a message for all the engineers and people with the maths background, because I have heard this from a lot of people that we tend to take quant very lightly, and we feel like quant is going to be a piece of cake for us, so we can just go out there and solve those questions. Obviously, for engineers, definitely it is a bit easier as compared to someone from a non-engineering background, but we should never take it lightly, and we should not never take someone else's word. Someone else might be very good at quant. He might already be sorted with, pacing himself and examining and handling the exam pressure. But that might not be the case with everyone. So one thing which is very important is that we should self-analyze. We should definitely give mocks. We should definitely have that 45 minutes sitting, practicing those 700 level, 800 level GMAT quant questions, and then see how are we scoring. Not going with someone else's word. We should self-assess ourselves, and there is no shame in scoring less on quant during practice because that is the reality. So I think one thing for especially for engineers is that don't take quant very lightly and focus on the reality, focus on self introspection. Apart from this, I think in general, if I talk about for everyone, whether it might be an engineer or a non-engineer, I think consistency is definitely important because what I understand is that the type of exam GMAT is, we might not have given such kind of an exam in our whole life. It's a very different kind of an exam, and you
Yes.
can't skip any question. You have to answer every question. Then it's like a dynamic thing. Every question is generated dynamically. So it's very important that we spend that considerable amount of time and we get into that feel of writing such an examination because the Indian exams are quite opposite to this.
Yeah.
In Indian exams, even if you score low, you might get a good rank or you can skip some questions. It's a whole different game. But here it's a timed section thing, 45 minutes per section. So that is another thing. So I think consistency is very important. And I think one thing out of like, what we say in Hindi that 100 baat ki ek baat. So that ek baat will be that rather than talking to a lot of people or observing what everyone else is doing, have confidence on yourself and
Yeah.
work upon yourself. Right? Because even I was a bit confused like which coaching to opt for. There was hundreds of coaching available online, but I think once you are just pick a particular coaching, whatever suits you, whatever you feel is the thing to go, and then religiously follow it. You need to be a very good follower for the results to happen. You can't doubt or distract yourself with 100 other ways which people are doing. So I think focus on yourself, compare yourself with your own performance rather than someone else's, and be consistent. So I think if we follow such a what I would say the blueprint, ultimately I think we are assured of a very good score in the
Tushar, it's been such a nice last half an hour talking to you. I'm so glad
end.
that I had this conversation. You have such a great clarity in what you did and what you are intend to do, and I have no doubt that the M7 is definitely a reality. It is going to upscale whatever you intend to do. I mean, whatever you thought MBA should be doing, it's going to
Mhm.
really upscale that experience for you, and I have no doubt about it. And since just I'm just putting across a couple of things up until now, until you get through the your MBA admit, whenever you do have a chance, because we spent Top 1% has spent 15 years, and as a part of a give back. If you do get a chance to refer anyone into the system to be able to do, start their preparation with us, please do, take that chance. We would like to give back to you as well. You get to benefit,
Oh,
and of course, the other person is going to benefit from getting this score. So please be in
absolutely.
touch with me. I would be happy to connect. If there's anybody you think would be interested, please just refer to them and we'll, connect separately.
Definitely.
That's something as a part of the 15 years of celebration of existence of Top 1% and Sandeep Gupta. And I have to also tell this, I cannot end this session without, congratulating it from Sandeep sir. He just passed this message to me as I was speaking to you. Massive, many congratulations to you. And I really wish from the entire team of Top 1%, of course, you're working with Autry, we'll know it soon when you get the admit, but a big admit, hopefully a big admit to you and many admits that follow through. All the
Sure.
very best
Absolutely.
and
Thanks
keep
a
in
lot.
touch. Yeah, thank you so much.
Definitely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so
Bye.
much, Natasha.
Take care.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.